From providing uninterrupted, pure fighting entertainment to being known for fostering young fighters, here's the real reason why Bellator is better than the UFC. UFC and Bellator are both organizations that host MMA fights. They follow similar rules, but each has its own group of fighters. But wait a second, these two organizations seem awfully similar. So the question has to be asked, what is the difference between UFC and Bellator? UFC and Bellator are both US-based MMA organizations that also host events worldwide. While Bellator usually reaches around 1 million viewers, the UFC tends to draw over 3 million viewers per event. Starting in 1993, the UFC was among the first modern MMA events, initially with few other promotions, mainly in Asia. It was founded by folks passionate about advancing mixed martial arts, including Art Davie, Bob Myrowitz, Campbell McLaren, David Isaacs, and John Milius. Back in 2001, Dana White urged his friend Lorenzo Fertitta to buy the UFC when it was up for sale. But since then, Dana has been the president of the championship, even when ownership changed hands. Early MMA fights had fewer rules and safety measures. In the old UFC events, fighters could punch the groin or kick opponents on the ground. But things changed a lot over time, especially with the introduction of the unified rules of mixed martial arts in 2009, which set new standards for the sport's regulations. Bellator MMA started in 2008, way after the UFC. Founded by Bjorn Rebney, it held its first event in 2009, and a couple years later, in 2014, Scott Coker became Bellator's president. Bellator originally branded itself as the toughest tournament in sports, with a unique single elimination format. Winners of 8-person or 4-person tournaments received $100,000 and a title fight against the Bellator world champion in their weight class. This format sets Bellator apart from the UFC and other MMA promotions. Bellator events were structured within larger tournaments, starting with 8 fighters in the opening round, progressing through the semifinals, and concluding with the finals. Not only that, but 4-man tournaments skipped the opening round. Tournament rules differed slightly, with elbow strikes banned in quarterfinal and semifinal bouts to minimize cuts. However, elbow strikes were allowed in the finals, which remained a 3-round fight despite not being a title match. While the UFC is seen as the top MMA league in the US and globally, some consider Bellator to be the next best. But is it really the next best, or is it better? Fighters climbing the ranks in Bellator often catch the eye of UFC scouts and might end up signing with the UFC instead. On the flip side, fighters who aren't doing so well in the UFC might move to Bellator for a fresh start. Some fans feel that Bellator showcases fights they wished to see a decade ago. They sometimes feature well-known fighters past their prime facing off, something that might not have happened in their prime UFC days due to various reasons like scheduling, injuries, or title fight priorities, despite fans' desires to see those matchups. Initially, Bellator set itself apart from the UFC by organizing fights in a tournament style from 2009 to 2014. For 11 seasons, they had 8-man and 4-man tournaments, but this changed when their founder, Bjorn Rebney, stepped down. Now, Bellator schedules single matchups between fighters, similar to how the UFC and other MMA promotions do it. Tournaments are more common in individual martial arts competitions like kickboxing. Difference between UFC and Bellator fighters roster. Both the UFC and Bellator boast sizable fighter rosters, but when it comes to drawing big names, the UFC holds the edge in terms of the money it offers. It's widely considered the most financially rewarding organization in MMA. The UFC houses some of the sport's most prominent figures, like Khabib Nurmagomedov, Conor McGregor, Jon Jones, Anderson Silva, Valentina Shevchenko, Amanda Nunes, and Stipe Miocic. Bellator, as the second-largest MMA organization in the US, also has an attractive roster. Among them are Michael Chandler, Ryan Bader, Gegard Mousasi, Alima Leigh McFarlane, Paul Daly, Lyoto Machida, Patricio Pitbull Freire, Quinton Rampage Jackson, Michael Venom Page, Douglas Lima, and Chris Cyborg. Difference between weight divisions in the UFC and Bellator. The UFC boasts 12 weight divisions, with 8 for men and 4 for women. Among the men's divisions, the heavyweight division holds the distinction of being the oldest, established in 1997. Shortly after, in December 1997 and 1998, the light heavyweight and welterweight divisions were introduced, followed by the lightweight and middleweight divisions in 2001. The bantamweight and featherweight divisions joined in 2010, and the flyweight division was introduced in 2012. Mark Coleman made history as the first ever UFC champion in the heavyweight division, clinching the title in 1997. For women in the UFC, there are 4 weight categories, 3 of which mirror the men's divisions, while 1 is exclusive to women. The women's bantamweight division was the first to be established, crowning its inaugural champion in late 2012. The women's strawweight division followed in 2014, and then the women's featherweight and women's flyweight divisions were introduced in 2017. American fighter Ronda Rousey made history as the first ever female UFC champion by winning the women's bantamweight title in December 2012. In Bellator, there are 9 divisions, 7 for men and 2 for women. The men's divisions start at bantamweight and progress through featherweight, lightweight, welterweight, middleweight, light heavyweight, and up to heavyweight. Women, however, have the opportunity to compete in the flyweight and featherweight divisions. The tournament formats in Bellator structure the divisions a bit differently compared to the UFC. Bellator stands out because of its tournament format, which, although it faced initial challenges, is evolving into a more refined and repeatable process. The tournaments require fighters to win 3 bouts for a title shot, allowing fans to connect with them emotionally. This investment in fighters adds significance to their title fights, similar to what UFC's primetime series aims for. The tournament concept has been a genius move, helping Bellator stay relevant during tough times and making their events a must-watch for fans. Bellator also offers non-stop action on Saturday nights for 2 hours on MTV2, showcasing about 5 fights per show. Each week, fans can catch diverse weight classes and fighter personalities in an exciting card without any lengthy fillers. Unlike longer UFC pay-per-view events, Bellator packs its shows with minimal downtime, focusing more on the fights themselves, which makes for wonderful entertainment. This fast-paced format appeals to fans, making Bellator a must-watch for those seeking continuous action. Does UFC own Bellator? The UFC and Bellator are separate fight promotions in the USA and have never been connected or owned by each other. They exist as distinct entities in the world of mixed martial arts. Does Bellator pay more than the UFC? In Bellator, fighter earnings vary based on individual status, ranging from as low as $1,500 for preliminary fighters. Meanwhile, the UFC guarantees a minimum of $12,000 for any fighter on their card. For instance, at Bellator 266, Yoel Romero earned $150,000, while another fighter, Jonathan Adams, received $1,500. Generally, UFC fighters earn a median income of $52,000 per fight, which includes base pay, bonuses, and sponsorships. There's ongoing discussion and scrutiny over UFC fighter pay, with a lawsuit revealing that fighters receive an average of only 19.6% of event revenue. Is Bellator more popular than the UFC? In the world of combat sports, the UFC is far more recognized and popular than Bellator, largely due to prominent fighters like Conor McGregor. UFC events usually attract double or more viewers compared to Bellator's MMA events. The UFC's widespread recognition makes it a household name among sports enthusiasts globally. In fact, some people mistakenly use UFC interchangeably with MMA, thinking they're one and the same because of UFC's immense popularity and extensive coverage in sports media. While it's hard to outright say Bellator is surpassing the UFC in overall popularity, there's no denying their recent gains are turning heads. Here's why. Bellator is known for fostering young fighters like Patricio Pitbull Freire, Juan Machacon, and Aaron Pico. These rising stars draw in dedicated fans eager to see their potential unfold. Big names like Fedor Emelianenko, Ryan Bader, Yoel Romero, and Anthony Johnson have switched to Bellator, bringing their established fan bases and star power. Is UFC the best MMA promotion? The UFC's reputation as the top MMA promotion stems from its roster of top-tier fighters. Only the very best athletes globally secure contracts with the UFC, making it rare for fighters of similar skill to compete elsewhere. The UFC maintains a large and ever-changing roster, with fighters regularly joining and leaving. Certain fighters like former Bellator champions such as Michael Chandler have transitioned to the UFC with notable success. At the same time, fighters like Yoel Romero have left the UFC at specific points in their careers to join Bellator. Fighters with a strong brand like Romero often move between promotions to secure good paychecks until they choose to retire. But the question is, which fighting league do you prefer? Let us know in the comments and subscribe to our channel for more videos just like this.